Imagine, for a second, earning a six-figure salary. You know, you've studied hard, you've worked your way up the ladder, and finally, you hit that magic number. Yet, somehow, every single Friday, you're checking your bank account, feeling this awful knot in your stomach, and just wondering where it all disappeared to. Well, today, we're going to map out the hidden financial system that is keeping ordinary, incredibly hardworking people feeling completely trapped. And better yet, we're going to show you the exact math on how to finally break out.
$100,000. I mean, for decades, this wasn't just a salary, right? It was a cultural milestone. It represented the ultimate benchmark for automatic wealth, literally the gold standard of the American dream. Earning this meant you had a house with a yard, 2 cars in the driveway, annual vacations, and absolutely zero financial stress. It was the finish line of financial worry. But if you look at the landscape today, well, that finish line has completely moved.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the massive disconnect between what we expect and what we actually experience. The myth tells us that hitting 6 figures guarantees you a life of luxury and excess capital. But the brutal statistical reality for a massive portion of the middle class is that this income level has basically become the new baseline for simply surviving. High earners are living paycheck to paycheck, literally one emergency away from financial disaster, and are completely stressed out by their daily expenses.
So, we've got to ask the obvious question, right? Where does the money actually go? If 100 grand is coming in, why does it feel like only a fraction of it is staying in your pocket? To understand this mystery, we can't just look at abstract economic theory. We need to look at real life. We need to trace the exact journey of a modern paycheck from the very moment it hits an account to the moment it vanishes.
To figure this out, let's meet our average American worker. We'll call him Alex. Alex is in his 30s, has a college degree, and just landed that dream $100,000 role. He's doing everything society told him to do. He isn't buying sports cars or flying first class. He's just trying to live a normal, comfortable life. We are going to follow 1 year in Alex's financial life to see exactly why he feels like he's running on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at the actual math. Alex starts with a gross income of $100,000. Sounds great, but right off the bat, before he even sees a dime, federal and state taxes take roughly $24,000. Next comes basic shelter. A moderate rent or mortgage quickly consumes another $24,000 for the year. Then we factor in mandatory healthcare and insurance. Boom, there goes another $8,000. And because Alex had to get a degree to get this job in the first place, he has student loan payments draining another $6,000. These aren't luxury items, guys. These are the absolute mandatory costs of participating in modern society.
When you break it down, it is genuinely shocking. A staggering 62% of Alex's income is instantly devoured by taxes, housing, healthcare, and debt. He is left with just 38% of his income. And remember, we haven't even factored in groceries, gas for the car, electricity, a cell phone bill, or, setting aside a single penny for retirement. The vast majority of his wealth is intercepted before it can even be used to build his life.
Now, when people see these numbers, the traditional advice usually kicks in. You know the drill. Pundits will say, well, it's just bad budgeting. We're constantly told that people are spending too much on designer coffee or avocado toast, and if they just skipped their morning latte, they'd somehow be millionaires. But is that actually true? The mathematical reality tells a completely different story. The pressure on the modern paycheck isn't coming from breakfast choices. It's coming from massive, unavoidable structural costs.
But to be fair, there is a psychological element we absolutely have to talk about, and it's called lifestyle inflation. Honestly, it's just human nature. As your income rises, your baseline for what feels normal rises right along with it. You get a raise, so you move to a slightly nicer apartment, buy a slightly newer car, and suddenly that extra income is entirely absorbed by a new, much more expensive baseline. It's this psychological trap that ensures no matter how much you make, your financial breathing room remains at absolute zero. But look, psychology is only half the battle here. The other half is macroeconomic reality. If we track housing costs over the last decade, a pretty grim picture emerges. Back in 2014, a portion of a 6-figure salary could comfortably secure a family home. By 2019, that margin was tightening up, and by 2024, the cost of housing has surged so dramatically that salaries have been left entirely in the dust. The goalposts for simply putting a roof over your head have been moved miles down the field.
And this brings us to the silent wealth killer, compounding inflation. Tracing this out over 10 years, we see the base cost of living in 2014 steadily increasing into 2017, spiking violently during the 2020 pandemic and resulting in today's compounding inflation crisis. It's not just that things cost more, it's that the actual purchasing power of every single dollar you earn is being systematically eroded. $100,000 today simply does not buy what it bought 10 years ago, not even close.
This creates a really dangerous paradox that totally breaks traditional financial wisdom. The old myth, the one we were all taught, was that sitting on cash in a traditional bank account is the safest way to become wealthy. But the mathematical reality? With modern inflation rates, leaving your money in a standard checking account is a guaranteed, slow-motion loss of wealth. You are essentially paying an invisible tax on your savings every single day as the currency devalues.
So, if the middle-class worker is steadily losing ground despite working harder and earning more, we have to take a step back, look objectively at the broader economic board, and ask, who really benefits from this system? If wealth is being extracted from everyday earners like our friend Alex, where is all that wealth actually accumulating?
Well, the hidden financial system relies on a few key pillars. First up, banks and financial institutions. They profit massively from the interest on consumer debt because workers have to borrow just to bridge the gap between their wages and inflation. Second, tax systems benefit from something called bracket creep. As inflation pushes your nominal salary up, you get taxed at higher rates, even if your actual purchasing power hasn't improved at all. And finally, institutions benefit from things like student loan interest capitalization, which basically keeps borrowers paying for decades. The entire system is structurally designed to extract wealth through interest and invisible taxes.
So, if you've been looking at your bank account lately and feeling a sense of guilt, let this thought really sink in. That isn't bad budgeting. It's something much bigger. Your financial struggle is not necessarily a personal failure, and it's definitely not a lack of discipline. It is the mathematical reality of participating in a modern economy where the foundational cost of living have fundamentally detached from wage growth.
But here is where everything changes. Now that we've diagnosed the reality of this hidden system, we're not going to just sit back and accept it. The big question is, can this trap be escaped? Can an everyday earner take back control of their wealth and actually build financial freedom in today's landscape? The answer is absolutely yes. But it requires playing by a completely different set of rules.
Let's move to and see how this builds into a concrete, actionable strategy to beat the system. Step 1 is building a liquid emergency fund, so you stop relying on credit cards the second life happens. Step 2 is aggressively escaping high-interest debt traps, because let's be real, you cannot build wealth while a bank is charging you 20% on a balance. Step 3 is maximizing your 401k and tax-advantaged accounts to legally shield your money from that tax extraction we talked about earlier. And Step 4 is the ultimate key, investing in assets, not liabilities.
Now, that fourth step, that requires a really profound psychological shift, because the whole system relies on you acting as a consumer. Consumers buy liabilities, things like expensive cars, luxury clothes, and rapid upgrades that lose value the literal second you buy them. Investors, on the other hand, buy assets. We're talking stocks, real estate, and businesses that generate actual cash flow and appreciate over time. If you want to escape the paycheck-to-paycheck trap, you have to transition your mindset from a consumer to an investor.
And that brings us to the absolute most important number in this entire equation, 0. That is the exact amount of high-interest consumer credit card debt you must target carrying from month to month, 0. It doesn't matter how high your salary gets. If you are carrying compounding consumer debt, you are paddling a leaky boat against a really strong current. Hitting 0 on bad debt is the absolute prerequisite to making your income actually work for you.
You are now awake to the hidden system. The biggest takeaway from our time together in this explainer is that simply understanding the math is the very first step to conquering it. You now know that $100,000 isn't magic anymore. You know exactly how inflation erodes cash, you know how the system extracts wealth, and most importantly, you have the blueprint to shield yourself through emergency funds, eliminating bad debt, and buying appreciating assets. Knowledge really is your strongest financial weapon.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, lingering question. What are you going to do differently with your next paycheck? Are you going to let it flow right back into the system of liabilities and invisible taxes, or will you deploy it to build your own financial fortress? Look, the system is designed to keep you on the treadmill, but now that you see the controls, you have the power to step off. Use it.